Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Welcome back for another episode. This is Frank Hagan. I am the founder and president of AmSpirit Business Connections. This is the Networking RX podcast where we talk about professional relationships, business networking, all sorts of concepts, science. Have some great people on here to talk to. Today is no different. I have Jason Cutter on here. He is the CEO of Cutter Consulting Group, and he really sees himself as a sales success architect. Anything from training to scripting to sales tech. He helps small businesses create scalable inside teams. His newest program is called Authentic Persuasion, with the goal of helping salespeople go from order takers to quota breakers. Jason, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Frank. I'm super excited to talk to you and see where this goes.
Yeah, it sounds like there's some apprehension there. Well, I guess let's start out. Kind of give us your journey. You're a sales success architect. I guess most people would say, okay, you're a sales trainer or a sales consultant. How you got to this point in time?
Well, it was a very windy journey. And unlike a lot of people who you might see in this kind of a role where you think they're a natural born salesperson, my evolution and my path was very messy, starting from a shy, awkward only child from a banker and an engineer parents who were kind of anti-sales to my bachelor's degree in marine biology and focus on tagging sharks, to many other careers that then fell into sales like a lot of people kind of do. There's very few people who set out with the intention of being a salesperson. It's just something that, people kind of get into. It was trial and error. It was tough times for a while until I figured it out, and then went into leadership roles. And really what I developed was my own kind of view of sales and my own process that worked really well for me. And then that's now what I help companies with, both on the selling side, so what to say and how to say it and what to do, but then also systems and processes so you can get, consistent results and not requiring, superstars, but, somebody who's got, some good effort and some good abilities, getting amazing results out of them.
Right. So what was your first real sales job? I mean, I think we're all salesmen. Your first sales job was convincing your mom to give you a cookie or something like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, the actual, hey, I'm getting a W-2 or a commission check.
Yeah. I mean, I worked in restaurants for a while and I avoided basically the way I had thought and the way I'd been raised is I didn't want to deal with the public and I didn't want to do anything customer service or sales related. So when I got a job at a restaurant in college, I worked as a busser because I didn't want to wait tables and deal with people, and then moved up to being a waiter. That would probably be my first sales job. Looking back now, there is a lot of sales that happens, and I was really good at it, but not intentionally, like not on purpose in any way. I just was natural. First real sales job came in 2002 when I entered the mortgage business, residential mortgages. It's tough to say that was really a sales job because in 2002 in Washington State, everyone wanted to buy a house. The housing boom was going nuts, and you literally didn't have to persuade anybody to want to get into large amount of debt. Right.
Yeah. No, it's well, I think the rates were pretty low at that point too.
Rates were low, appreciation was ridiculous. And yet, what was fascinating, I didn't receive much training. I didn't have like a guidebook. And I made lots and lots of mistakes that I still use today that I learned in 2002, 2003, that I can vividly remember making those mistakes. And I see salespeople make them all the time. So there was a lot of learning by trial and error.
Yeah. You talking about your journey reminds me of talking to my kids, because they're all in college or out of college, and they're kind of business types, and I have not pushed them into sales per se, but just said you've got to embrace it, right? Hey, the water's not bad. You're going to end up in the water anyways, meaning sales. Somehow, some way, just get in, get your nose bloodied, whatever it is, just get in there and deal with it. And they kind of are. My youngest son, he's in this summer, he's going to be a junior in college. Internships are not to be had with COVID. He broke out bought a power washer and running around the area power washing, just doing all sorts of things to try and pick up clients, networking, all sorts of stuff. That, hey, that's great. That's a great, not that power washing is the long-term objective, but just all the little skills along the way. So you got a book, Selling with Authentic Persuasion, Transforming Order Takers to Quota Breakers. There's that tagline again. And I read Authentic Persuasion, and I think of our mutual friend, Brian Ahern. What's the book about? What's the genesis? And let's just jump into a couple of these, just a couple topics here. We're not going to read the book to you, audience. Go buy the book.
So essentially, if we look at kind of my path, it's the one I've seen a lot of people on as well. Like we were just talking about, people who fall into sales or they weren't planning on being sales. I mean, I firmly believe there's no such thing as a natural born salesperson. There's some people who have some talents and abilities that they start off really early and they put in those, Malcolm Gladwell, 10,000 hours starting really young, and they're persuading and they're selling and they're the lemonade stands and the hustlers as a kid, and it just grows. But I think there's a lot of people who are in sales. They're not very good at it. They're struggling. They want to be successful, but they're torn because they're afraid that to be successful in sales is that classic, slick salesperson that we can all imagine, which is, manipulating, lying, tricks, closing lines. Like, hey, if I can show you a way to do this, is this something you want to buy today? And, that high pressure, high confrontation kind of arm twisting mode, which honestly, I don't think people actually like. Customers don't want to buy from that person. They do, but they don't like to. And so there's a lot of people in sales or even in business, if they're selling for themselves, right? You see a lot of independent solo people like real estate agents and loan officers or consultants and coaches where they're afraid of turning into that person. So their default response is the order taker mode, where instead of persuading and pushing people forward to a common goal, they're just doing nothing. They're sitting back and hoping people buy from them. And so what I've done with the book and what I've done with sales reps for years is help them identify who they are, what's authentic for them, what the self-awareness piece of their strengths and their weaknesses and their fears, and then why they want to do it. And then combine that with proactive, positive persuasion in whatever they're selling, of like taking responsibility for your role as a professional to move people forward, and how that is your duty to help the right people buy from you if you have the right thing to sell.
It's interesting that this whole, let's call it an urban legend of the hardcore sales, how that is perpetuated forward. When did it start? Was it, and I'm not asking you questions, but these are things I ponder in my mind. When did it start? When was it ever really successful? And why does it continue to be perpetuated? Because I've never been comfortable with it. And I remember at one point in the mid 90s, early 90s, I took a course. I got my life insurance license, and right away it's like, here, start making calls. And it's like, oh, I don't like this at all. Just the way they were having you do it. I don't like it at all. And, but I don't know.
And there's some reasons why it works and why it's always worked. Human behavior, as great as we want to be as people, we all have these parts of our brain, primitive, primal, lizard parts. Some of them get triggered really easily by the fear of missing out, scare tactics, scarcity. There's a section in the book where I don't spend a lot of time on manipulation, but I like to make it clear: persuasion versus manipulation, like where you're trying to get somebody to do something for your benefit, but absolutely not their benefit, which is not what what you want to focus on. But yeah, it works because people are susceptible to that, and they're trusting, and they want to believe, and then they get burned. Also, there's a lot of times, and we've all done it, I've done it myself, where you want to buy something, or you want to buy a new car, or you want to do something,
Right.
and you kind of probably shouldn't, and somebody helps talk you into it, and then you regret it later. You had this emotional thing you wanted to buy, and then it didn't work out. So that's why it happens. It keeps happening. I think it's happening less now because of the information age and the connectedness through the internet. It's
Right.
easier to expose bad actors and faster, and they have to move towns, if you will, more often than in the past.
Right. Well, I mean, as you were talking, I was thinking, I thought of the first car I ever bought, subsequent cars I've bought at CarMax, which is, you pretty much walk on the lot, you pick the car, the price is on there, and you're done. And I love it. But the first car was there, I knew I needed a car. The car I'd driven through high school and college and law school, the door wasn't closing. I needed a new car, right? So not that I was desperate, but but there was certainly a lot of selling that went with it, and I was kind of in that mode. And you're right; those things work. It works on lower end items, and it works on upselling of items that people need, like car. Do you need the warranty? You probably should get the warranty and the life insurance. I would. Where I think where it breaks down is a lot of the people, who are, person selling financial services, where it's a longer term sort of a thing. That's what they see. Those things are portrayed on television. They're portrayed in movies, because it's sexy. It's easy to portray. It's hard to portray a long-term relationship in the movies.
It's not, and it's not fun to watch, right? Like a long-term relationship is not a fun thing to sit through a movie about.
Right. So you want to have the show about the boiler room and
the sizzler, right? The sizzle, right? Yeah.
That's, and I think that helps perpetuate it. You use the term relational consultative sales.
Yeah.
That's
and I think what's interesting about this whole topic, and you buying the car and my own experiences, and everyone's had those experiences, is that again, I think in this day and age, more things are purely becoming a commodity.
Yeah.
Right. So if you want to buy a house, it's a commodity. Because the information is out there. There's so much transparency. You want to buy a car now. If you're not going to CarMax, you're literally going online, finding that exact car, walking into the dealership and saying, here's how much I'm going to pay because here's what it's worth. And so that has tipped the scales from the information being held by the salesperson, and they can leverage that. Right. Like there's a chapter in the book Freakonomics where he actually talks about that and that shift. But I think that's the key. And so when you're left with this even playing field of knowledge and information, then it's all relationships, it's all rapport, it's all consultative problem solving. So what is it that you really want? What is right for you? Not just what can I sell you, but what's right for you? And then do I have that? And if I do, great, here's where we're going together. Like I'm going to take you with me because I have the solution. If I don't have it, then I'm going to point you in the right direction because I care about your outcome more than I care about me, putting a square peg in a round hole and paying for it later.
And that's the relational aspect of it. The consultative aspect, how would you define that?
For me, it's not seeing every person, every prospect in the same way and pitching them the same exact thing, right? And my audience and the people I'm focused on helping, and I feel like it's the same audience that you have and everyone in your network. It's not a one size fits all solution, right? So this isn't magazine sales where it's like every person I talk to, I should sell a magazine to, and it doesn't matter. There's some kind of qualification. There's somebody who could be a good fit. And are they a good fit? Yes or no? And under the framework that not everybody is going to buy from you or be a qualified, proper customer, right? Like it's not always a perfect fit. And if that's the case, then what you've got to do is use essentially a consultative approach where you are getting to know them, you're asking questions, you're getting to the root of the situation and their problem or their goals as deep as you can, and then coming up with a solution and providing that solution as a professional, which is, okay, based on what you said, here's where we should go. And I use the analogy a lot, like how doctors, perform their process, where it's, there's an exam, and then there's a diagnosis, and then there's a prescription relative to that person, right? It's not a one size fits all. Everyone gets the same, surgery, no matter what their problem is. It's here's your specific prescription. And then, now let's get you on the road to where you want to be.
Right. Yeah. As you talk, I'm thinking of a book that I just was reading by a gentleman by the name of Rob Thomas. He's an author, professional speaker out on the East Coast. The name of the book is Who You Need to Meet, but he talks in there. One of the many pieces of advice he gives is stop looking at the next person as your next sale. Look at them as your friend.
Yeah.
Because that's going to ease the relationship. And he kind of makes the point, he implies that, yeah, you need sales today. I get it. Doesn't mean the next person you meet needs to be that sale, right? Develop that relationship, because that can be your sale for tomorrow. And I think that's where some people depart from this, because they're trying to hit quota, right? They're trying. I need it by the end of the month. I need it by the end of the month.
And that's an ultra tough one. I've been managing sales teams and now consulting with sales teams for what feels like a long, long time. And that's a tough one to find that balance, because like you said, I mean, you want to not see that next person with the bullseye on them where you like, I got to make this sale or else I'm homeless. Right? Like with that attitude, mainly, and I wasn't even going to talk about this part, but mainly because when you do, you have what some industries call commission breath. That's what it's called in the car business. But you have commission breath where they feel that desperation. And we talked about relationships. I see sales the same thing as courtship when you're trying or wanting to date somebody new, that most people can relate to, is if I'm desperate or eager and I'm forcing myself and trying to make this, date happen, it will repel the other person. You might actually get that date, but I'm going to guess you really probably don't want it. It's not going to go well. And so it's relational. It's how you would operate in your personal life. But you've got to balance that. This is the hard part. You got to balance that abundance mindset, which is 8 billion people on the planet. I can find who I need to find. There's enough fish in the sea with, okay, but I need deals now. Also balanced with, I want to see abundance. I need deals, but I can't be desperate, but I also don't want to give up too easily. And this is where I see a lot of people who I put under the bucket of order taker. And sometimes people get offended and they get a little hurt at that label. And then they realize, where I want to help them get to. But there's people who have such an abundance mindset and such a relational caring stance that every conversation is about, here's what we do, here's my information, let me know when you're ready. And they're too passive, which is where the persuasion part of what I focus on is helping them move forward, because you can't be overly sitting back on top of the mountain just waiting for things to fall in your lap, because then you'll starve to death. Right.
But where I tell people they need to be, and when I talk to young salespeople, and I don't do what you do, but I tell them that's why they got to work their butt off on the front end. You got to do it. You got to put in the extra time. And it evens out in the end, because you start building up great clients and clients who are referring you. And it's, the amount of effort versus income on the front end is way out of whack. The amount of income and the amount of effort, I don't want to say on the back end, but as time goes on,
you got to play the long game.
Yep, it flips. And you have to give up that making quota, hitting your goal, sometimes getting the trip for bigger things down the line, and just take the loss to fight another day. And
you're a big relational networking person, and obviously that's what you promote. That's why you have the group that you have and everyone who's involved, that works with your groups. What I focus on telling people is you've got to think like a farmer and act like a hunter, which means you've got to act like a hunter so you can eat today, but you really want to think like a farmer, which is planting seeds long term, right? So ultimately, eventually, you're not having to go out there on the savannas to go find a woolly mammoth to hunt, or else the tribe is going to starve. But you've got to do both. You've got to do some hunting now, and then you've got to be also not, turn and burn, where it's just like I'm selling deals and I'm destroying relationships for now, because eventually you'll lose.
Yeah. Well, you become on a treadmill at that point. You'll make sales, but you're not getting referrals. You're not having happy customers, and you continually have to just work.
And you're and when that happens, because I see that a lot, that's the classic sales model, which is like, just don't care about referrals, not relationships, close them, find them, fleece them, and forget them, which most people have never heard that term, but that is a term, unfortunately. Yeah. And the problem is you're one slump away from being done, like from being out of business, because you're hoping you need every day to be a successful hunt.
Right. Good. I like that quote. Think like a farmer, act like a hunter. Well, we have people listening. Obviously they can buy. One thing they can do is they can buy your book. That would be a way of helping you. Selling with Authentic Persuasion, transforming order takers to quota breakers. How else can people help you listening?
For me, I am at the point where I just love working with either individuals or sales teams. I mean, whether it's products or services, telephone sales, in-person sales, I think there's a lot of it that's some sales fundamentals. So for me, any referrals, anyone listening that wants help with that, or anybody who knows a business that's looking for improving their sales teams and their sales effectiveness, and doing it in this kind of framework, a relational consultative sale, that's what's most exciting to me.
Okay. You work with individuals or mainly groups?
I do. Yeah, I do one-on-one coaching. I have some online programs if people prefer that, and then group coaching, and then consultation type projects, long-term overhaul improvements type things, anywhere in that spectrum.
And I know you have a podcast as well. We share a lot of the same guests, I think. Which I think is awesome. You get them and send them to me, or vice versa. And they're all great. It works out. But name of your podcast?
It's called The Sales Experience Podcast.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
How would somebody get a hold of you? What's the best way for them to get a hold of you? We'll put that in the show notes.
The best thing right now, I created a hub because I have content in lots of different places, like the podcast. I have a website for Authentic Persuasion. I have my consulting website. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. The easiest thing for people, the simplest thing, is go to my website, jasoncutter.com.
Great.
Which is something new that I've done to use that domain. And then there's just basically a hub full of links on there to find me wherever is best for people, or find resources. I have a free ebook. So jasoncutter.com.
That's exactly what I do. It just makes it so easy. Well, I mean, there are people out there that love to communicate via LinkedIn. I know somebody, I'll send her an email and I'll get a response on LinkedIn, because that's just where her mind's at, right? And I don't get it, but that works for her, Yeah.
And I stopped doing that to you. I tried just doing that with you on LinkedIn only, and found that email is best. So
well, for me, LinkedIn, I just can't keep up with it. They get lost, and I feel bad. It's like, why didn't you respond? It's like, I lost it, And I don't mean lost it, just buried. Anyhow, that's a whole nother discussion. Well, I appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Frank. I'm glad that we finally got to connect on a mutual podcast episode.
Just to finish up here, being networked is vital to success. And if you are responsible for driving sales in your business or profession, receiving referrals is the most effective means of generating revenue. It's always been that way. If you're looking for easy ways to drive referrals, to get referrals, join a chamber, or even better, a networking group like AmSpirit Business Connections. Having said that, think about this. If you had a choice, would you rather be a renter or the landlord? To me, that's a no-brainer, especially if you're smart. You want to own the building. You want to be the guy collecting the rents. So why would you just want to pay to be in a networking organization when you could make money from operating a networking organization? At AmSpirit Business Connections, we're looking for highly engaged entrepreneurs and professionals who want to operate a networking organization. In other words, they want to own the building. Interested? If you are, reach out to me. My email is in the show notes or at the end of the podcast. We're in the process of our national expansion and looking for great organizers, managers to help us. You'll make more money from your professional connections and also make money building professional connections.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AMSPIRIT.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.